Hello, and welcome to a successful transition from monogamy to open. We're going to continue our series today on the top 10 mistakes to avoid in open relationships. So far, we've done 1 through 6, and today we're going to talk about numbers 7 and 8 in the top 10. Number 7 is when meeting other people who are interested in playing, don't assume that they engage the same as you. Make sure ahead of time, before you get into the actual getting down and dirty, that you ask about levels of engagement that they are comfortable playing. And this can be appropriate whether you're dealing with the swinging lifestyle or even polyamory, because people do very different levels of polyamory than other people. Some people like hierarchy in their polyamory with primary, secondary relationships. Other people prefer more of what they call a relationship anarchy, where they don't consider any type of hierarchy in their different relationships, in the status of them, and that they find to be very uncomfortable. So it's important to know that when you're getting into it, because otherwise that can create a lot of problems down the road. In polyamory, especially if you're expecting to be considered a primary or a secondary, and this person has no hierarchy to their relationships, that can be problematic as you go on down the road. The same with the swinging lifestyle. If you're meeting another couple, it's important to know the differences between soft swap and full swap. Do they only reserve certain types of sexual behaviors, such as intercourse or kissing or even sometimes oral sex, for each other? And so they only engage in other types of activities with other people. That's very important before that you're in the middle of the act and now suddenly you're finding out that certain things are off the table. Or whether they're comfortable with same room or different room. Those are important things to talk about before you actually get to that point in the interaction. As well as, like we talked about earlier in some of the earlier mistakes, is of having that conversation with your partner ahead of time so that you two are on the same page about what you're comfortable with, at least at that phase of your relationship. Now, oftentimes these things change over time. What you may be comfortable with in the first year of making that transition may be very different at year 3 or year 5. So remember that these things may evolve in time. They may not necessarily be set in stone. And they may not necessarily be set in stone for other people too. So even if they're people you've played with in the past, you may want to check with them to ensure, are they still on at that same level, or have things evolved in their relationship. Number 8 is to remember that in open relationships do not necessarily follow the standard narratives of traditional ones. It's not necessarily about taking it to the next level. Oftentimes in polyamory, they talk about the escalator type of relationships, where we think of relationships as going somewhere. And like an escalator, often the steps are only wide enough for 2 people to stand on. And so it's always thought of that there's only 2 people on this escalator going up, and that the escalator is going somewhere. So therefore the relationship has to be going somewhere. Often that may be more relevant with polyamory than with swinging, because polyamory often has deeper emotional connections than most people have in the swinging world. But it can certainly be appropriate for swinging as well. So it depends on how you do those kinds of relationships. Some people have deeper friendships in swinging that almost mirror polyamory in a way. So it can be very easy then, because our culture and the way we're taught to think about intimate relationships often teaches us that this needs to be going somewhere. It's been going on for 6 months. It's been going on for a year. Where is this going? Where is this leading? And particularly in open relationships, that isn't necessarily the way they're designed or intended to be. Sometimes it is about just enjoying them in the moment and not worrying about where they're going. But we're so used to it that we tend to do it automatically, sometimes without even thinking about it. We want to have these conversations about where is this going. So remember that sometimes you need to think about these kinds of things differently. So that's number 7 and 8. And on Friday, we're going to talk about 9 and 10. So we'll wrap up this series. Have a great week until Friday, and I will see you then. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.